This is The Law Show on CL 650. Now back to the show.
We can work it out. We can work it out. Life is very short.
Welcome back to The Law Show here on CIL 650. Alex Stojcevic is with us this morning. Alex is one of the partners with Maynard Kisher Stojcevic Immigration and Citizenship Lawyers here in Vancouver with offices downtown on Hamilton Street. Alex, of the many ways individuals from points afar can immigrate to Canada, and we've discussed many of them on this program with you and your partners, Gordon and Rudy, one of the options available is a provincial option. Each province in Canada has a slightly different approach, but they have something called a nomination process where the province can bring in a certain quota of individuals and add them to the federal numbers every year. And here in BC, just a few short weeks ago, there's a new program been introduced. It's our new nomination process. So explain the BC nomination process,
Sure.
or for that matter, anybody's nomination process, and how ours in BC maybe differs from other provinces.
Sure. So in some provinces, including one I visited recently, Manitoba, nomination is immigration, okay? In the case of, let's say, Manitoba's slaughterhouse or pork industries, at this point, many of their immigrants were chosen through provincially selected programs because they don't fit in any of the federal ones.
Okay.
And the logic there is we have industries that have specific needs. We are better suited than the federal government to choose these immigrants. And we've made an arrangement with the federal government by which we would get a choice to select them or nominate them ourselves.
Right.
So people should think of provincial nomination as an outsourcing of the selection decision from the federal government by agreement to the provincial government.
So if the province, if everybody goes through all the hoops and the province says you're now nominated, that person has every likelihood of becoming a Canadian citizen.
Provided that the federal government, they still have a role on the admissibility side. So you still have to be admissible. They have to check if you have any serious health problems. You're sent for medical exam. You're sent for
criminal background checks, all that.
Checks,
Sure,
and
of course,
all of that.
Of course.
So the federal government retains that role, but the selection side, that goes to the province.
So now we have a new selection process in BC.
Well, we do, because what happened was the province, due to changes in the federal system over the past several years that we've been talking about, there's been a huge influx of applications into the provincial system. And what's happened is the provincial system has an overall quota of 5,000 cases with a budgeted amount of between 300 and 400 as business cases, and the rest under international student, strategic occupation, and various other categories that the province maintains. Last year, they took in triple the number of applications they had in any other year, and across all categories. And that is because of changes to the foreign worker regime, changes to express entry. And this caused a pause in processing because the province was basically overwhelmed. They, at one point, last fall, they went from a process that had been taking 16 weeks to get a decision. And this is a decision to a BC employer, by and large, who was saying, hey, I have this guy who's working for me, or I have this gal who is a critically useful employee for me.
Right.
She's running my logistics. She's running my research into this key area. I need you to get her nominated so she gets permanent residence fast.
Right.
Instead of 16 weeks, that all of a sudden went to a year. So the system became unwieldy. Why would an employer use it? And
it's a bit of a gamble, too, isn't it, to have someone around for that long and at the end of the year, next, and that'll be it.
And so to deal with this, the province paused. They didn't take any new applications for a while, for 90 days.
To get rid of the backlog, among other things?
To try to work on their backlog and to try to redesign the program. And they have. Now they have a completely online system in all categories.
Okay.
Effectively now, you have to be in the express entry pool until at least January before they'll actually consider your application. That's another backlog tactic that they've addressed. And they've come in with a completely redesigned business program. And that's what I want to spend a bit of time with you and your listeners here talking about.
Excellent. Okay.
Instead of a first-come, first-served system where, hey, you meet the minimum criteria and you have money to invest, we will, eventually get to you and issue you a work permit, and then let you run your business. And if we like what you've done, you meet certain criteria that we have provided you with in a performance agreement, we'll give you a nomination certificate. Instead of doing that, what the province has done is created their own version of an expression of interest system similar to Express Entry. What you do now is you register with the provincial government, you pay $300 fee, you do an online profile of yourself.
Okay.
In your online profile, you have to meet certain minimum criteria in each section, and those criteria include such things as your work experience, the size of investment that you're going to come up with, the number of jobs that you are committing that you will create,
Okay.
Your net worth, your business concept, which they will also look at.
Look at the business model.
In terms of their own criteria.
Okay, right.
And your own personal adaptability, in which will things like your age and your language ability will be taken into account. And then you'll be scored out of this system of 200, and based on who has the highest score, and the best, of which 40% will come from business concept, we will pick you on that basis rather than first come, first serve. And I have to tell you, I am quite excited about this.
Okay.
Because to me, what this enables is an opportunity for people who have real business ideas to be differentiated from people who are just doing this as a way around the lack of an investor program.
Okay. The elaborate scheme to essentially buy a passport.
Exactly. This
Right.
makes that impossible in British Columbia.
Okay, well, that's good to hear.
To give you a sense of where things were with the provincial program, for the first time, the provincial program in the business categories had to really refuse a high percentage of people. Why? Well, because in 2011, when the federal government started to not accept or put real strict limits on new passive investor cases, a huge demand was created for provincial nomination. And at the time, there was a fast-track process that if you paid a $150,000 bond to the provincial government, I can't remember now if it was 125 or 150, it was one of those two numbers, you didn't have to actually perform. You just pitched the business plan, paid the bond money,
Right.
and then if you wanted the bond money back, you had to show that you had done a business. But for a lot of people, this bond money
Cost of doing business?
was the cost of doing business.
Sure.
And so they didn't do very much.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, the government realized, and which is why they did away with the provincial government, I should say,
Yes.
did away with this bond program, that it was being used as a way of just letting in more passive investors. This is the final piece in that puzzle. Don't come up to us with a vague business. Well, if you come to us with a vague business plan, we're going to compare you to everybody else. And we're going to pick the people
With the dynamic business
with the
plan.
dynamic business
Right, right.
plan, the capital committed,
Yeah.
the concepts that are going to have the most number of jobs. There's points if you've been to British Columbia and have attended business seminars and have done, you know, communication with them.
Mm-hmm.
There are also points in here if you speak some English and if you're younger versus older.
Okay.
And I think that's a sensible way of allowing the province to fast track people who have particularly good ideas or who have a lot of capital to invest or who are putting their business in an area that the province has identified as being strategically useful, as opposed to the usual. I mean, you meet the minimum criteria. What does that prove? Nothing.
Yeah.
You know?
Okay.
So I think this is a very exciting and very sensible approach. And I'm looking forward to seeing how it'll work in practice.
And what we're talking about here is the new BC nominee program for
entrepreneurs and businessmen.
and we're talking the new changes to BC's aspect of Canadian immigration law. Our little share of it has changed just in the last few days. And we'll tell you more about these changes after this quick timeout. It's The Law Show on CIL 650.
There's more of the show still ahead. This is The Law Show on CIL 650.